This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast. Phone call. Finally, we arrived at his Frank Lloyd Wright house, and Reggie, you and I shuffle into the living room. Joel heads into the bedroom, not very far away from where the living room is. We can hear Joel and his girlfriend, Lisa, having a conversation as if they're in the very next room. And I don't remember what Joel said. It pissed her off. It made her super angry because Lisa was very petite, very pretty young woman, but tiny. I mean, just compared to Joel, she was, three of her could fit inside Joel, four maybe. And in the next room, this little woman is ripping Joel Silver several new assholes. Hello and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz. That was quite a teaser, wasn't it? Wait till you hear the rest of the story. But before we get to that, I want to remind you to please, if you in fact like what we're doing here, be bold. Whatever the platform you're using, if there's a way to like us, please do so. It shows the algorithm who's boss. And even better, really, please subscribe. That way you'll know about everything that we're working on right now. And there's some very cool stuff coming. In fact, we're going to talk about some of that cool stuff in this very episode. On the one hand, this is a kind of beast of 2023, as the Crypt Keeper would put it. On the other, it's a setup and a prelude to 2024. Earlier this season, we sat in with Roger NYGARD, who first saw that Trekkies were no mere TV fans. They were, in fact, the vanguard of the whole fan convention culture. And I don't need to tell you how jibungo that became and is. We'll revisit our first meeting with Chelsea Rebecca and James Janisse from Dead Meat. When Chelsea did a fundraiser with us for the motion picture home, Gil and I became immediate fans of both Chelsea and James. So after we chat with Chelsea, we'll tell you about Are You Afraid?, the new horror series that Gil and I created. It's about flesh-eating ghouls, and it asks the question, in a world as fucked up as ours, is it really so bad to want to be the monster? Think Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Walking Dead meets Sweeney Todd without the music, all with a wicked fun Tales from the Crypt sensibility. Chelsea and James are in the cast. They're also executive producers. We believe Are You Afraid is going to be the next Walking Dead, except bigger, scarier, way funnier too. But first, let's kick off this episode of the podcast by retelling you the story that we teased you with, The Car Ride from Hell. How Gil and I spent 6 hours in a car with Joel Silver traveling less than 6 miles. For what it's worth, Donald Trump makes a guest appearance. It's been a great season filled with all kinds of surprises. We hope you agree and continue the adventure going forward with us. We promise to try and make it worth your while. So where were we? Oh yeah, Joel Silver. Gil and I were summoned to Warner Brothers for a preseason meeting about Tales from the Crypt in the office of our boss, the larger-than-life movie producer, Joel Silver. One of the things about working for Joel Silver was you had to have a lot of meetings, and of course all the meetings were always at Joel's. And so that meant going over to Joel's very nice office at the Warner Brothers lot and waiting. And we spent hours. Well, you spent far more hours than I did cooling your heels at Joel's office. We talked about in the first season, I think in episode 1, about the meeting we had at Barry Josephson's office where he kept us waiting for a literal hour.
And we had said, we're going to give it an hour. If it's an hour and 1 minute, we're leaving. And you're right. Most of my youth before my bar mitzvah was spent waiting for Joel.
Remarkable how that happened.
Yeah.
You were so young before that and so aged afterwards.
Absolutely.
So going into our second season, I think this is when this particular story takes place. Now, every season, we rented a different warehouse space. And in the first season, we were at the A1 Globe Pasta Factory in West LA, Venice Boulevard near La Cienega.
Robertson and Venice. Yeah.
Right. What season? Second season, were we in Santa Monica? I think we were in the space in Santa Monica.
I think the second season was Santa Monica, and then we went out to the Valley.
And then we were out in the Valley, 2 different spaces.
The reason we had to do that was I kept asking the partners, Joel, Bob, Dick, and Walter, to buy a warehouse so we could just make it our own facility. And they kept saying, "Well, we're not buying a warehouse. Ask HBO." And so I would go to HBO and ask them to buy a warehouse. And they would go, ask Joel to do it. He's got all the money in the world. So they never bought a warehouse, and they would never give us the pickup until it was too late for us to keep this facility that we had. So every year we gave up the facility, and then 4 or 5 or 6 months later, we get the pickup, and we have to look for a new facility. Behind us was Spelling, Aaron Spelling.
Aaron Spelling. Okay.
Aaron Spelling was always behind us, picking up the warehouses as soon as we left. And so I would go, I can't believe it. Another one going to Aaron, another one. And we would take about $10,000 or $15,000 and take a warehouse, put up petitions, do whatever we had to do to make it our own. So that was just getting the warehouse ready.
Right. So there was always a lot to talk about with Joel, especially, and going into the season, there were so many decisions that had to be made. And Joel was very, very hands-on and insisted that he have, final say in an awful lot of critical decisions. And so, he didn't want to have those conversations over the phone. Sometimes he wanted to, it was part of calling people to him to sit in his space, because you come to the king. The king does not go to you. The king doesn't shout. The king, he shouts at you in his office. Is how the king works. So I don't remember what it was that we had to discuss on that particular afternoon. I think it was around about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 1:30, and you and I went to, I think it was 2 o'clock. Let's be good and say it was 2 o'clock, a post-lunch meeting, quick, just to talk about a whole bunch of stuff that you had to talk about with Joel.
Right.
So we arrive promptly, because you are very good about arriving promptly, even when you suspect it's pointless. And we proceed to sit.
And we're waiting and waiting.
And then, this is in the day where we didn't really have cell phones per se. I mean, people had I don't even remember. This was so long ago. No, cell phones were, if what we had, they were phones, nothing but phones. And that's all they were good for. And they were big and heavy. And so it's not like you could use this time sitting in Joel's waiting room, working on your phone. It was utterly dead time. And
finally, he opens the door. We come in. He closes the door. He gets up and he says, "Come on, come with me."
Now, but before we get there, now this is hours have gone by. Hours, and it's really, we got through 2. It's like 3 o'clock passes, 4 o'clock passes, 5 o'clock passes. Now, occasionally, just so we understand the rising feeling, okay, come on already. You had gone to his assistant several times and said, "Look, we this is stupid. We can't, we just need 5 minutes." And he would go in and come back out and nothing would happen. And occasionally, I think you tried to push your way in. And I think at one point, Joel just waved you away. You're like, "Yeah, give me 5, give me 5. Of course, the 5 turned into another hour. So now suddenly the door opens, come in. And we walk in as Joel is, in essence, walking out. Because Joel has just lost a crown.
And he says, come on, I'm going to the dentist. Come with me." And I look at him and I go, "I don't want to go to the dentist."
He said, but he said, "We'll have the meeting in the car. We'll have the meeting in the car. We'll talk about everything in the car." Great. Okay, fine. So the only reason that we got into the car, that we allowed ourselves to be kidnapped, was that Joel had basically said we could take care of our business on the drive to see his Beverly Hills dentist. Now, the minute that we got into the car, of course, Joel got on to his car phone. It wasn't a cell phone, it was a car phone. And suddenly it's one call after another, after another, after another. And there's not an opportunity for you to get a word in edgewise. And one of the calls Of course, we can hear these calls. He puts everyone on speakerphone because Joel always wants it to be, theater. And so one of the calls, I forget who called who. It's Donald Trump. It's Donald Trump. And I forget what business Joel had with Donald. They were talking about something or other. And then Joel acknowledges our presence there in the car with him. He says, "You'll never guess who I'm sitting here with, Don. You'll never guess who I'm sitting with. The producers of Tales from the Crypt." And Don goes, "Really? Tales from the Crypt, I love that show." And Joel says, "You should be in an episode." And Don says, "That's a great idea. Send me a script." And he hangs up. And they drive, and the drive continues, and another phone call, and another phone call. Finally, we arrive in Beverly Hills in front of his dentist. It is now, we got to his place at what do we say, 2:00 maybe, and now it's about 6:30. And we've driven through traffic to get to the dentist. And come on. And as we exit the car with Joel, and it's being driven by his driver. Was it Reggie? Reggie is the driver.
Yeah.
So right. Reggie's driving. It's one of, he had a fleet of SUVs, did Joel. It's not a car, it's an SUV. And so he said it's a big ass SUV. He's sitting up front. We're sitting in the back. We might as well have been sitting in the way back. It's a giant SUV. And so we jump out and we follow him in, and you begin to tell him some of the business we got to talk to. We've into the lobby, into the little teeny elevator, and the three of us going up the little elevator up to I think the 3rd or 4th floor. And we follow him down to the hallway. You're trying to squeeze in everything you possibly can as quickly as you possibly can. We go into the dentist. We meet his dentist. This is an emergency after hours kind of a thing. And into the treatment room goes Joel.
I really wanted to follow him and ask the dentist if I could give him the Novocaine.
Truly. And then we sat there in the waiting room of the dentist's office for an hour. It took the better part of an hour for the whole thing to happen. And of course, you are losing your mind. This is the whole day is gone and nothing is happening. And
it's dark out.
Oh, yes,
the whole day.
It was light when this meeting started.
Yeah. And now he comes out, and he can't speak because the Novocaine is if it did.
But the dentist has something to say because the dentist pitches us an idea for an episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Right.
I've got an idea for a scary dentist.
And we say, great, have your people call our people in the morning. We'll set something up. Nothing ever comes of it.
Right.
Back into the car. He's on his phone calling his girlfriend at the time. I think was Lisa. I think it was Lisa. They had something that they were attending together that evening, and they were trying to arrange the getting her to where it had to be and getting him to where it had to be. He said, look, we'll stop and it's on the way. We'll stop and pick you up on the way back from Beverly Hills to Warner Brothers. And so instead of going directly back to the studio to get on with our lives, or maybe even have the meeting, no, we're going to stop at his house in the West Hollywood Hills, his Frank Lloyd Wright house, to pick up his girlfriend, to take her to this, so that she can get to this event with him. Phone call. Finally, we arrive at his Frank Lloyd Wright house. And Reggie, you and I shuffle into the living room. Joel heads into the bedroom, not very far away from where the living room is. We can hear Joel and his girlfriend, Lisa, having a conversation as if they're in the very next room. And I don't remember what Joel said, but the next, it pissed her off. It made her super angry because Lisa was very petite, very pretty young woman, but tiny. I mean, just compared to Joel, she was, 3 of her could fit inside Joel, 4 maybe. And in the next room, this little woman is ripping Joel Silver several new assholes. And Joel is absolutely befuddled. And they're in the living room. Gil, Reggie, and I are stunned by what we're hearing, and the urge to laugh is incredible. It is the funniest thing we've ever heard. And it gets louder and louder, and we're desperate not to laugh, because if we laugh, Joel will hear us. And that can't happen. But it goes on and on. Finally, it stops. And Joel emerges into the dining room. She'll meet us later, he says. Come on. We follow him out.
Silence.
All urged to laugh. Go, 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 go. Follow him out. We get in. He drives back to the studio. Total silence. No phone, no nothing. Joel goes his way, and we go our way. And I think maybe you got about 3 sentences of what you had to tell Joel that day told. By that point, it's, I think it was 8:00 at night.
And I think we made an executive decision that, something, we don't need to ask him any of these questions. We'll just do it. And we did it. And then we learned an important lesson. That's what we did for the most part thereafter. We just did it. And if there were problems, then we would hear about them.
Now,
there's a coda to this story.
And you just told me this, and I'm shocked because I know nothing about this.
Well, years later, I would say, 2014, 15, 16, somewhere in there, after Valkyrie,
Gil produced Valkyrie for Warner Brothers,
got very involved with veterans and raised a lot of money for veterans. In fact, I left the business for 5 years and did nothing but raise money for veterans. And so through an ad agency in New York who knew what I was doing, they introduced me to Mariano Duncan, the Yankees pitcher. And Mariano and I became quite friendly because he was very involved with trying to raise money for domestic abuse and for children. He's a very religious guy, lives in New Rochelle. And we became somewhat friendly. We would talk every once in a while. And I get a call from the ad agency one day in New York. I'm in LA. And they said, well, listen, there's going to be a benefit for Mariano. And he's asked me to invite you. He wants you there. And I go, well, tell him thank you very much, but I'm in LA, and I don't really see myself fly. No, they'll pay for everything. They want you there and your wife. So we go, oh, okay. So we fly to New York, and we're staying at the very fancy hotel. And finally they go, okay, the event is going to be tonight or tomorrow night, and the car will pick you up, and it'll take an hour to get to the event. I go, where is the event? It's at the Donald J. Trump golf course in Westchester. And I'm like, really? They couldn't find another place? So there's nothing I can do about it. So I go up, and they want you there a little early for some press pictures with Mariano, et cetera, et cetera. So we get up there. It's a gorgeous place. I think they charge like $250,000 for initiation and $100,000 a year membership, something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm there.
An obscene number, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's a gorgeous place, and I'm up there, and Mariano comes in, and we're doing whatever we did, and then he says, you got to I want to introduce you to Donald. So Jeannie and I walk over, and Donald is a big guy, and he looks at me like I'm nothing, and then looks at my wife like, who is she?
Like she's something, yes, and she is.
Yeah, and I'm like standing there looking at him, looking at my wife, and like. I can almost see the drool on his mouth.
Oh my God.
And he said something very nice to her. And then he said, I'll catch up with you later, to me, and walked away.
Our friend Roger NYGARD is a Renaissance person with deep interests all over the place. By day, he's an editor. He's worked a lot on Curb Your Enthusiasm. By night, he's a documentary filmmaker whose documentaries have plunged into subjects as deep and compelling as the nature of existence and the truth about marriage, in addition to Trekkies, Roger's masterpiece about fans. How long did the Trekkies project take to finally get from when you started to when you finally, okay, there's the cut, I'm done?
Trekkies was like a Exocet rocket. It was 9 months from shooting our first footage to a final cut. It went so fast. Because the footage was so rich, we had a movie very quickly, as you could imagine. You go to a convention, we could film anybody, and they were all so colorful that we quickly had a movie of some kind, a deeply flawed movie, because it does not have that consistent narrative arc that a documentary is supposed to have.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, it held attention apparently for 90 minutes, and even though our film is so flawed, everyone copied those flaws going forward because it became the paradigm for success for fan documentaries because it was so successful financially and critically. And, it bought my house. It was a huge success. Even though it had all these flaws. Film can succeed even though it doesn't follow the rules.
If you were to go back in and, all right, knowing what you know now, having the experience you know now, if you were to go back and remake Trekkies, how would you refocus it?
It should be like Denise Crosby goes on a journey with a quest or a goal, or finding 2 or 3 or 4 specific Star Trek fans and watching them live out their day or whatever it is they're going to a convention or setting up a convention, something goal-oriented that they need to succeed at that's very challenging. That's the proper way to do it. But it wouldn't have been Trekkies. It wouldn't have been what it is. And it's really, I think it's charmed in the unusual quality of what it is. And because we were so naive about what we were doing.
The fans, they really are remarkable. I just 6 months ago, I'd never been to a horror convention at all, ever. And I went to one with Jason Stein, who is one of the executive producers of our podcast. He's one of the dads from the Crypt. And I found the experience enlightening. The crowd of people, it was a smaller one. It was basically people sitting at tables and lots of people selling merch, all kinds of merch. And lots of people dressed up, cosplay. There was the thing that just blew my mind was she couldn't have been more than 5. And she had a custom made Leatherface costume, right down to a size appropriate chainsaw. And her mom had obviously worked very hard on this costume. And here's the weird thing about horror conventions. Nobody ever does cosplay or dresses up as any of the victims. Everybody dresses up as the monster.
Right. Yeah. The villains. We love the villain, good villain.
Yeah. Everyone, people are not usually there to sign autographs of people who died in the movies. Yeah, some people will have died, but it's the monsters. They love the monsters because the monsters are empowered. And I think what I found, which was surprising and enlightening, and I was thrilled to see it, for them, that whole fan experience is empowering.
It's also a monster is a side of ourselves that we all have that gets loose, and you can let it loose at the convention and it's safe.
Why am I here and what is my purpose? Am I supposed to start a family? Fight for some cause? What is the point of everything?
Everything created is one thought in the life of God. Boom, boom, and then that developed into, human beings at McDonald's.
Man's purpose is to chase women.
I think we exist because God created us because he was lonely.
The reason we're here on this planet is to eat good barbecue.
What is religion for most people, really? It's a way to socialize. It's a social experience, whether you're going to church or temple or whatever, that you're going there to talk to people, to meet your friends and listen. Okay, we got to listen to the talk and then it'll be over. Then I can talk to my friends. And conventions are the same aspect of, we are social beings and we need to socialize and be around people and interact with people. And it gives people a chance to go and interact with others. And sometimes in a way that they feel is more genuine to who they actually are. I was profiling Renaissance people, Renaissance fair people in one. I did a pilot for a TV series based on Ren fairs, and they said that the people who went to Ren fairs said, "I am myself at the Ren fair. I'm not myself at the office in my everyday life."
In 2022, Gil and I sponsored a fundraiser for the Motion Picture Home, wherein we did a table read of the unproduced Tales from the Crypt movie Dead Easy. It was the movie we were supposed to make instead of Bordello of Blood. One of the actors we cast and worked with was Chelsea Rebecca. She and her husband, James Janisse, created and run the Dead Meat website and YouTube channel. You were fantastic, by the way.
Thank you so much. That was so cool. I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I initially said yes. I was like, okay, this is a neat thing for charity. Yeah, totally. And then I started learning like who was all going to be involved. And it just was like, what did I stumble into?
What did I get myself into? Right. I must tell you, the thing that I love the most about the entire read were your different voices. I said this to Alan afterwards. I said, wow, that was great. She really brought it alive.
You have a fan. You have a fan,
Chelsea. Oh, thank you so much. Dead easy. I think it'll sell. I wish I could help you, Mr. Daru, but I'm afraid we don't have any record of a Michael Daru being here at the time you're asking about.
Hey, Dad. I did?
I'm not supposed to talk to you about him.
We'll do a deeper dive into you after we bring Jason. I don't want to leave him in the waiting room.
Sure.
And then we'll get your reactions to it. But we just wanted to tell you while we had you that we both thoroughly enjoyed what you did. And
oh, thank you so much. I was so like, I definitely practiced. I was like, I want them all to sound, because it's hard because it's not animated, right? It's like, this is a table read of something that it would be live action, but it was like, all right, I still want to do voices. It was an interesting exercise, honestly.
I know that you said on one of your podcasts, Chelsea, you said we need people to be offended by horror movies. Part of the fun of horror is that people get concerned that it's destroying the moral fabric of the nation.
Oh, I'm curious what episode that was from.
First of all, I love that.
Yeah.
I love how you think. All right. So my question is, all right, what's the ultimate horror movie that steps, that rubs it in people's noses?
Oh,
well, I think like every generation has one, like The Exorcist in the 70s, maybe like Frankenstein in the 30s or 40s, and then like but Rosemary's Baby in the 60s.
But those didn't, Universal Pictures never offended anyone's sensibilities. There was a Hays Code that made sure no such thing was going to happen.
I think some of those were pre-code. I know at least, I'm trying to think if it was Frankenstein or there was something about the depiction of like the dead in those movies where that was the first time. It's weird to think about, but some people had never seen, something so like just.
What year did Todd Browning make Freaks? Is anybody
Was that in the 40s? I thought that was earlier.
It was early. It's early, I think.
But that's a good example of like a movie that really, even the studio was like, we can't have these actors eating with our other actors because it offends them.
That was 1932.
Yeah.
And when was the code? Officially.
We'll keep Googling.
I'm going to ask you guys.
I know. I'm like, I should know that. That was like the late 40s, maybe.
It was his code started in 34 to.
Oh, okay, it's earlier than that.
That's when Will Hayes came to.
But or Psycho is a good one that really offended a lot of people.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, think about this for a second. Just think about this for a second. Bill Gaines and his dad were brought down to Washington D.C. to testify in front of the Un-American Committee because of their comic books.
Yeah.
And their comic books, when you look at their comic books as comic books, they were little moral tales. And if you read the first panel, you knew the entire story. The whole thing was laid out to you. And yet they were brought out on the carpet and pulled down to testify in front of the Un-American Committee. And that was in the 50s. That's really how far we've come, if we've come at all. From that kind of an attitude and that kind of an approach. Today parents, encourage kids to watch horror movies and enjoy them themselves. I'm amazed sometimes when we sometimes meet people and we're talking about horror and they bring their kids in to have a conversation with it because the kids are much more aware of what's horror today and what they like and what they don't like.
You do cosplay too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I had no idea you would have known I did like cosplay and stuff. Yeah. I haven't done it in a while because it's time consuming and also conventions kind of, we weren't doing them for a few years because of COVID. So I think that really like is when I stopped. But
you miss it?
I miss it. Yeah. I would like to start making costumes and stuff again. It's just, it's a lot of it's time consuming, especially the stuff I like to make, which is a lot of like hand embroidery and just like little, fidgety detail type things. Lots of like Game of Thrones is like the costumes on that show are beautiful. And I've done a lot of Game of Thrones cosplay, and it's all just this tiny hand embroidery. And it's like this incredible craft, but it takes forever.
You've been podcasting and doing your YouTube Dead Meat since what, 2016?
Yes. So James started the kill count on Dead Meat that would have been 2017. And then I started doing the podcast in 2017.
You have 6 million subscribers?
Yeah. We don't know how that happened.
That is when I saw that number today, I had to look at it several times. I think that's an M for million, right? That's M for million.
Yeah.
This is a terrific accomplishment. How have you? Well, all right, to a degree, I know how you've done it. You put on a really good show. It's really enjoyable. You're very good at it.
Thank you.
Let me jump in, because I remember when the show first started, and you were doing the Friday the 13th kill counts. And there was an article about it on Bloody Disgusting, and I think that's kind of what at least started the flood, because that's what I remember. Like a good horror fan, I had that on my RSS feed, and I saw that. I'm like, oh, okay, let me go check this out, and I was instantly hooked. And especially when you're doing your videos on Fridays, and I was working from home on Fridays, so that was like my Friday ritual was my wife, my kids, I left the house for the day. I can make a cup of coffee, sit down and watch my kill count for the morning as I got ready for work.
Yeah, it was just truly kind of amazing time. And yeah, Bloody Disgusting helped a lot. They were so kind and writing and doing a write-up about the kill counts when it first started, and the channel was like, it was small. But what happened was that Friday the 13th video game came out around the exact same time James started doing kill counts of the Friday the 13th movies. He didn't time it on purpose like that. It just was like this beautiful coincidence, and people looking for clips from that new game were finding James's videos, and it just, that I think kickstarted or I think it was like pushing it into people's algorithms and feeds, and it was just like this, so yes, we've worked hard on it, but also we got really, really lucky and found this weird little niche that I think people were looking for something there.
Well, I also think that people recognize the production value in it. Like it wasn't just a guy in front of his like DVD or something. That you actually have like the sets and everything, and you're the effort you guys are putting into it and the writing and everything really stood out amongst other things.
Thank you. We're really lucky.
Well, luck is important, but you got a skill set. You got, you're delivering great content because you're capable of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Not everybody is, alas, as we know. What do you want to do from here?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we're producing a movie right now. I haven't like produced anything before aside from like, little thing, nothing like this where it's like, we're trying to get funding. We're trying to get it. It's the whole, I've never been in like this kind of position on a film. And so that's interesting. We're trying to, take Dead Meat from just YouTube to like, we kind of talk the talk. We talk about horror movies. I feel like we want to try our hand at making one. There's a script that a friend wrote that I absolutely adore, that I believe in so much. And we actually filmed the proof of concept. We filmed the first 5 minutes of it last month. And so that's on our YouTube channel. So that won't be like what the actual movie is, but this was like, here's kind of like the tone, what it would maybe look like. You get a sense of the story. So that's where we're at with it right now.
Working with Chelsea and James, Gil and I, we saw the potential for incredible synergy. Are You Afraid is the product of that synergy. Like I said, we truly believe Are You Afraid is the next Walking Dead, but with an even cooler monster. Gil and I will be taking Are You Afraid out into the marketplace in the first quarter of 2024. We're really excited about it. here are a few videos from the show's website to perhaps whet your appetite. Pun intended.
Flesh-eating ghouls must consume human flesh in order to survive. But what makes human flesh palatable, if not downright tasty, is when it's flavored by human fear. In particular, the human fear of being eaten by a flesh-eating ghoul. True fact, any human can ghoulify and become a flesh-eating ghoul, provided they can overcome their fear of flesh-eating ghouls. All flesh-eating ghouls start as human. But whereas most humans succumb to their fear, flesh-eating ghouls don't. They overcome their fear. That's what turns them into flesh-eating ghouls. When a flesh-eating ghoul says something's good to the last drop, they aren't talking about a cup of coffee. Flesh-eating ghouls must consume human flesh in order to survive. But what makes human flesh palatable, if not downright tasty, is when it's flavored by human fear. In particular, the human fear of being eaten by a flesh-eating ghoul. When a flesh-eating ghoul asks a human, "Are you afraid?" it's usually the last thing the human will ever hear. Fact: some of the most famous people you know aren't actually people. They're flesh-eating ghouls.
Hey, see you next time, everybody. And don't forget to check out Are You Afraid? The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.